Hey everybody, this is going to be Mr. Speak, and I'm going to speak about Iron Man Armored Adventures, Ghost in the Machine, and this is going to be a review. You know, I know I didn't, start out reviewing Iron Man Armored Adventures, but after this episode, I've honestly become interested in the series because because it doesn't follow the general archetype of how status quo is God, which for many some of you might recognize as TV trope where everything returns to normal at the end of the episode. This is a case where everything does not turn to normal. I mean, in this series in general, we've had moments where certain things didn't return back to normal and they played roles in later episodes, but this is on a much more drastic scale. Okay, I'll give you a quick rundown on the episode. Basically, Obadiah Stane is getting chewed out by the company because Tony will take control of the company within a few months, and they don't want to go on any weapon projects or anything like that that aren't extremely short term because they know Tony will just, uproot everything. Well, now, Obadiah, the board could vote to have Tony, shut out of the company, but they have no interest to because he's smart and they feel he would help the company rather than hurt it. And they're pressuring him for giving to get him battle ready armor. So Obadiah Stane hires the Ghost to help steal the Iron Man armor. And what happened is we see Tony, a little bit of Tony in class. As he goes out afterwards, he goes out and tests the Iron Man Mark II armor again. Meanwhile, Ghost caused a little bit of an accident. He sabotages a helicopter so Iron Man will come and save it. And then he followed Iron Man back into the armory. And at that point, Ghost sees everything. He sees Tony, getting out of the armor. He sees all the armory, and he ties up Tony. He downloads all the specs to the Iron Man armor and leaves. Afterwards, he tra- Tony tracks Ghost when he gets free, and he fights Ghost a little bit, but Ghost just distracted him and War Machine, and so he could sell the plans. War Machine got him to convince Tony to calm down and think things over, so he could figure out what Ghost's plan, Ghost, who Ghost was working for. After a little bit of class, he figured out everything. He saw Stain. Stain has already been talking about how he's got the specs right there. He's talking to the board about it. And also he finds out that the Ghost also sold the plans to Justin Hammer. And just right after the Ghost makes his deal with Justin Hammer, Tony comes out of nowhere and attacks him. Afterwards, he uses Ghost's own equipment that he used to sabotage the helicopter on his armor. But Ghost had a backup generator and he threatens Tony's life. In exchange, Tony also threatens his, which is a darker moment for Tony as well. However, even though he sold the specs, he did not sell Tony's identity. He plans on doing that if anything happens to Ghost in the next few months. But the reason he did that is because Ghost is planning on waiting until Tony gains control of his company so he can blackmail him for the information to get money out of it. But basically, there is no upside to this episode. Everything from after the first few minutes, like everything really goes downhill for Tony. I mean, he's lost the specs to the Iron Man armor. Somebody out there knows his identity and is willing to use it against him for his own purposes. It really is what you would call a downer ending for the episode. I mean, seriously. At the worst thing that could have possibly happened to Tony at this stage happened. There's no bright side. There's no redo. Nothing. Even if Tony somehow prevented the ghost, like the ghost was somehow prevented from telling Tony's identity to the whole world, he can't really do anything about the effect that both Stain and Hammer have his tech. I mean, we already know Hammer was working on his own project, and Stain was already looking to develop stuff like the Iron Man armor in order to weaponize. But the worst thing that could have possibly happened at this stage happened to him. Happened to him. He can't really do anything about it. And you know, a light note to be made. Technically, Tony didn't patent his armor, so that means they could Justin Hammer and Stan could sell it to people, and everybody could make one, or one of them can patent the armor, and then they can make money off of his own invention. So yeah, it's pretty lighter compared to the other stuff that happens in the episode, but it's still something to be upset about. Overall, out of 10, I give it a 10. Seriously, it was an entirely enjoyable episode. I mean, not only that, but it's somewhat portrayed more realistic. Like if you had this kind of tech in the real world, if you had somebody like Iron Man, this would be a realistic thing to happen because we already know the tech exists out there to do a variety of things. We already know that, for its time, the Iron Man armor was pretty advanced. Even though some of the tech in it may be considered obsolete, it's still pretty advanced in that it has it all crammed into, you know, considerably small piece of armor. So, as for, this has been a really good episode. I mean, this is what gets me into reviewing the series as a whole. I probably will review the rest of the season, though I may be off and on with it. The thing with the trends have been it's always been, like off and on seasons. Like they'll show a few episodes, and then there'll be nothing, no new episodes, just be reruns over and over. Nothing new, nothing new is introduced for the longest time, or ever for that matter. Some just drop off like they'll go on a hiatus and that won't change. I really can't understand it, but if they keep up at the pace or keep at a reasonable pace with the episodes, then I'll review it. However, if not, I can't promise anything. Overall, this has been a 10 out of 10. Great episode. If those people are a bit sketchy on the Iron Man Armored Adventures, I encourage you to continue watching the rest of the series because at this point, due to the setting of the show, it'll be pretty interesting to see how this develops compared to the actual comic because a similar issue came up in the comic where a lot of people had Iron Man tech and they used it to develop their own variants of their own armor or build stuff very similar to the Iron Man armor. And Tony just went nuts on him. So, but that was, the more adult version of Tony, who was respectably able to get away with a lot more than he should have, but still, I'm not sure, how this is going to affect his behavior as a whole. His friends seem pretty accepting of that, this is practically, again, this has been doomsday for them because by extension, Ghost could figure out a lot of the other stuff, namely that Rhodey is War Machine or one of his friends is War Machine. So this might affect his relationship with his friends. In what ways? I'm not sure. It depends on how they read the situation and how they do it. But it'll be interesting to see all that come to terms later on in the season. This has been Mr. Speak on Ghost of the Machine.